Tell us.
How about
I
I'll
work
go
to
ahead and
break
get
it down.
started. So, like Leo said, my name is Amy Sailors. I'm the crime prevention officer for the Fiesta District. Okay, so what I wanted to talk to you about a little bit is our homelessness that we have going on. So, I'm sure for any of you who've been in Mesa for any length of time, or actually any East Valley city, or just actually across the state nation, we are seeing an uptick of the transient, homeless, unsheltered, however you want to kind of identify them. But we do feel like here in Mesa, we have a really good handle on kind of what's going on. We luckily have a city that backs us, and we have a lot of really great resources. So one of the screens that'll come up will show a little card that we made up that has resources on it that the officers literally every time they're going out and doing a subject stop and it's someone who potentially is homeless, they're able to give them this card that says like options of where they could go for housing, as far as trying to get into a place, or maybe like a substance abuse facility that might be able to give them temporary help, where you can get food boxes, where there's actually, you know, like food, either breakfast, dinner, those kind of options. So the officers are literally handing those out when they're making the traffic stops. That way it's something that these individuals can keep with them and be able to refer to it, as well as just if they, we also give out the 211. Have you heard of that resource? So yes, we feel like we're really lucky with Mesa having some really great resources that we're able to be able to push out to these individuals. With that being said, one of the dynamics of Mesa and why we are seeing this constant kind of uptick of individuals is that Mesa is the only East Valley city that has the food source. Okay, so we have St. Vincent de Paul, and they serve breakfast and lunch, and then that's on Broadway and say kind of like about Center Street, and then just west of that, Broadway and Country Club area is Paz de Cristo, and they serve dinner. So there's not any, you know, Tempe doesn't serve them meals, Chandler, Gilbert. So we actually hear of people being bussed in, or they take the light rail to be able to come over here to have access to the food. Okay, so we know that we have that dynamic here in the city, and so we're trying to navigate around that. What we find is a lot of the individuals that are continuing to be on the street are what we call like service resistant. So we're offering them those services every time that we meet them, like, hey, is today going to be the day that maybe you'll try to, you know, take resources, if it's a drug addiction or alcohol, or what we see with a lot of them is that it's mental health issues. However, it's been, you know, however they've gotten it, whether it is through drugs or alcohol or just, you know, their own medical diagnosis. So like I say, we feel real fortunate that we have the resources available to give to these people, okay? But with that being said, we still, part of my job as the crime prevention officer is trying to mitigate issues that businesses have with these individuals. So homelessness in itself is not a crime, but unfortunately, some of the behavior of these unsheltered individuals lead to criminal activity. Okay, so our best, what we feel like is our best tool that we have for the officers is called the Trespass Enforcement Program. So depending on where you are, the city of Mesa divided into 4 divisions. So currently, right now, I'm over Central and Fiesta. So you could always get my info from Trish to see if you're currently on this program. Okay, and real easy, what it involves is you signing a letter, and it is good for 1 year. So it's essentially, it's giving us permission to work on your behalf in the hours when you're not open. Because if something was happening during the day, you would just pick up the phone and call us and be like, hey, we, my employees got to work and they're saying that there's a homeless individual that is sleeping on the door front or won't move or whatever the situation is. So we're not asking businesses to, actually approach the people. That's when you can call out to us and say, hey, tell the dispatcher exactly what's going on. So in those situations you would call in, but where this letter becomes so much more important is in the hours when you're closed. And say like an officer happens to be driving through the area at 2 in the morning and they're seeing somebody that's, at a window shop to purchase windows, and obviously the business isn't open. So that letter on file gives us the right to be able to come on personal property and chat them up and see what's going on. So if indeed they're really not there to buy windows, then we can trespass people, right? It isn't just the first thing that we do. We try to, give them grace and kind of find what's going on. But it's a good tool for us to be able to, if say we have it recorded that the person's been there a couple times, say on the second or third time, then if it comes down to it, we need to trespass them, then that's what we'll do. At the very least, we can move them along and tell them that they're not wanted and they need to move on. Okay, so like I say, the letter good for 1 year, and it gives us the right to be able to work on your behalf. So we feel like that's the best tool for the officers to have, to be able to go and contact some of these individuals. Okay, and this is kind of what the letter looks like on the left-hand side, and then like I would also give you the trespass warning log. That, so if it's that we contact an individual during your business hours, the officer would come in and write down that name. So say like a situation happened at say like 6:30 in the morning and the choice was made that, hey, we're just going to, give them fair warning, like, hey, you're not allowed to be on here. Their name's written on there. But if say like 3 or 4 o'clock, he called back and say like, hey, this person's back again, he's disrupting my business flow, then it's, a little bit different, right? Because we just contacted them the same day or maybe contacted them yesterday. So that's what the trespass warning log is for us to be able to have that active record of being able to look and see when that person might have previously been trespassed. So there's no cost to the program as far as actually joining, but the only thing is that you do need to post a no trespassing sign at say like the entrance or exits to your building.
Okay. I do see that Karen has a question on that.
Yeah, so that's interesting. You have this set up for businesses, and I don't know if that's only considered for commercial property. Until this very year, we've lived in our neighborhood for now 37 years. And if there was something that happened, like somebody sleeping in their car or hanging out where they shouldn't be, the police would come and have them move along. The last time that happened, which was just a couple of months ago, the police were very reluctant to even go near that car. They said they couldn't do anything about it, that they didn't, I don't know what it was that they weren't telling us. It was very different and kind of the opposite of what, and obviously this is a neighborhood I'm talking about. I'm not talking about businesses. There are many people that have home businesses like I do, but it's still a neighborhood. So can you tell me, switch gears a little bit about a neighborhood? Has there been some kind of change in policy about homeless people in neighborhoods?
As it pertains more to like in a neighborhood, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're describing a little bit more of like a suspicious in nature situation, like on the city block, if I'm not mistaken. Is that what you're kind of describing?
Yeah, it's hard to say that somebody was suspicious when they haven't done anything yet, but in our neighborhood, we're on bigger acre property. Everybody knows everybody else. And when there's a strange car with somebody sleeping in it for a long time that nobody knows, the only time things of that had happened is when we've had either bad things that happened or just basically people are like, we'd like the police to check this out because we have no idea what the person is doing and what's going on. I mean, is this just something simple like their car broke down and they have no help? But in this case, the guy had blocked off all his windows. It's not like anybody could just rap on the car and ask him. He had like shaded off all his windows so you couldn't see inside, and he was inside. So, and as I said, this is the first time that I ever heard police officers say, you know, we're just gonna leave him there.
Well, obviously, kind of hard for me to speak to it because I don't know all the details, but and with that being said, you know, every district is a little bit different, but
We're in
normally
Red
what would
Mountain, Red
happen is,
Mountain District.
okay, normally you would call that in, right? You could either call it into like, I don't know if you know Lindy Marino, but the crime prevention person there, which at the end of this presentation, it'll list our emails and
She was
phone number,
confused
but
too.
pardon me?
She was confused too. Like, I don't know
Oh, okay.
what's going on there.
Okay, so I don't know exactly what happened in your situation, but normally what we would do is to go out and like contact that person and explain to them that, you know, they aren't really allowed to be, I mean, kind of what it comes down to is this like urban camping in their car on a city street.
Mhm.
Okay, so just to, you know, kind of enlighten them to that they aren't allowed to do that. So I don't know, like I say, what the situation is, but for businesses is kind of what this more is to do with. Yeah, but, and like Leo said, it might have, however it was called in, but a lot of times people will say, you know, I'm not really sure if it's something criminal that's going on, but it appears they're sleeping in the car. So that's how it kind of could be perceived as maybe being suspicious. So not sure about that, but the trespassing, no trespassing and that whole program does apply to vacant residences. Okay, so that's the exception, but it wouldn't be applicable to say like a family of 4 that is just having issues. The trespass program doesn't apply to that.
Okay.
Okay, so like I say, if you wanted to reach out for any of the current businesses, if you are on the program, that's great, or you wanna just double check that you are, or you wanna sign up, you could always reach out to me and I can send you the information for you to sign up. And that would be great. Obviously, that's our goal, is to try to get as many of the businesses covered as possible.
It doesn't,
Okay.
but it doesn't cover home-based businesses, I'm assuming, even if they're open to the public. I'm assuming
No,
it has to be on commercial property. Okay.
yes, yeah.
Is there, do you know right now is what the percentages of those retail community businesses that even know about what you're saying? That they're aware that they can get this
You know, I
information?
don't have a percentage, but something kind of interesting is I'm working with the city side. So, you know, we have kind of like the police side and then the city side. The left hand doesn't always know what the right hand is doing.
Right.
But so you can imagine, so like I'm one person, there's one crime prevention officer for each district. So we have like 14 miles here. So I could spend my whole 10-hour day just going around to all the businesses trying to get them signed up. But unfortunately, there's a lot of other more critical stuff or just as critical stuff that comes up.
Absolutely.
So I reached out to the city side. So I'm trying to work hand in hand with them as far as when individuals sign up for a business license and they're sharing the email addresses. So I'm emailing those people and trying to get them signed up or checking the addresses.
That's exactly what I was thinking. And like when they sign up their license, is there a way to communicate that right away?
Yeah, unfortunately not as easy as just, you know, having that hand in hand connection, but we are trying to work on it. And then it also, I mean, I enjoy going out and talking to the businesses, especially if I see a new business coming up, or we also, part of our job is to go to the pre-submittal meetings for like new build or rebuilds, where we're meeting with the actual owner and say like the architect. So at that time, I'll give them a form and say, hey, you know, once you get open, if you want to sign up for trespass, here's how you go about doing it. You can email it back to me. So we are trying to kind of hit it from a couple different areas, but it would be something that it would be great. In Mesa, you know, I mean, it's not like some of the other cities where you have to get a license and the recommendation is yes, in January of last year, that's what started. But as far as like if a critical incident happened in the middle of the night at, you know, whatever, I don't know, 450 South Country Club, we don't really necessarily have access to even who the owners are. So we're trying to mitigate what's going on at 2 a.m. when, you know, these grave officers are on there. So the form has on there like the contact name and say like an after hours number. So it helps with that as well. So yeah, but I mean, if you guys being as the chamber, I mean, whoever can push it out to individuals that are the business owners, that would be ideal. Or, you know, however, just trying to get it out so that as many people as possible know about it. Okay, so that's kind of for the trespass program. And then I just wanted to kind of give you a few tips as far as like what I see or we see as a department for different potential issues where businesses are victimized, okay? So doors and locks, you know, pretty much that's the entry point, right? Of businesses who are accessed, whether, you know, an employee forgets to lock the door at 9 o'clock at night, or they break the door or get in through a window. So just trying to keep in mind, you go to the next screen, as far as like the commercial doors. And I know some of them are through like an HOA business, you know, type thing. So you have to probably ask for permission to be able to do some of these things. So with that being said, these are some of the recommendations that we push out to businesses, okay? So like on the left is what a standard, usually exterior rear door looks like, okay? That middle one is a metal guard that goes over like where the whole door jamb is. So the idea behind that is that it pretty much makes it impossible for suspects to be able to get a crowbar in there to try to access the building that way, okay?
Can I ask something real quick?
Yeah.
Can you just go down on your PowerPoint, like he's on, if you're on 1, if you can just go 2, 3, 4, 5, because I only see like the first slide still. I'm not sure if, maybe it's me.
No,
I
it's not
see-
just
I
you.
see the
They,
same.
they're just showing Mesa Police Department, September 3rd.
No,
So you just like click down, if you go to number 2, 3, 4, 5, then we can see it that way. Please, like click on slide number 2 or 3, wherever y'all are at.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, no, it's fine. Technology at its finest, right? You never know what it's gonna do. If you just like click up, like if you go over there and just click on the slide number 2,
I think it's not working for them. I think they couldn't get it going.
like, see how you have red around number 1?
That one?
Oh, there we go.
Oh, now we can see it.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, no, no apologies.
You
Thank
thought we
you.
had it.
So, like I was saying, that first door, you know, is pretty much what the standard door looks like. So, I mean, just easy stuff as far as, you know, trying to remind the employees like, hey, do a 9 or 10 o'clock check. If they're exiting, say like out the front door, and that's where your alarm is, hopefully the businesses are alarmed, just doing that double check to make sure that that rear door is closed. You'd be amazed that sometimes when we go out and try to investigate a business and there's no signs of forced entry, and then it ends up being that like that last employee or 2 employees forgot to actually lock that back door, they got in a hurry. So just trying to, you know, maybe have, say like a check sheet where you're double checking the doors to make sure that they're locked. And then the middle picture is where I was saying with that metal guard that kind of covers up the door jamb, so it makes it harder, I'm not gonna say impossible, but harder for these bad guys to get in there with the crowbar. And then the third one is where that the bar is on actually the inside of the business and locked on that left-hand side, say like with the padlock. It can't be locked like that when the business is open. But we have had situations where businesses have had to do that when that exterior door has been penetrated and they've broken in, okay? So the commercial door is definitely a great place to start, you know, on the rear of it. Go to the next one.
No, I think we're gonna struggle with that.
And then the deadbolts, to have that 1-inch throw on it. And hopefully they're all, the anti-wrench collar is being utilized on it. also just another extra added security, so they can't be able to get it, you know, aren't as easy to get a tool in there. And then I'm sure everybody knows this, but kind of just in a simpler way. So a single cylinder lock has that key on one side and then the thumb lock turn on the other, which is great. But say like you had at your business, you had glass at the front or rear door, and that's how you were, it was being locked, was just that turn lock. Someone potentially could break that glass on the right hand side and then just reach around, turn that thumb lock. So ideally, we recommend to the businesses to have the double cylinder where it requires the key on both the inside and the outside to lock that. So something just kind of to think of. And like when I go out and talk to different businesses or, you know, neighborhood watch groups, the intent isn't to go out and like scare people, but the reality is we're seeing these kinds of burglaries. So just kind of giving you the heads up on potentially what you could do. And then what we feel like is the ultimate is if businesses are able to actually afford camera systems and, you know how they work, so that in the case of a burglary that you're able to share that information with, like, say, the officers that come out, or be able to download it to our current system where we're able to put it in as evidence. So if you do have the camera system, or just even trying to be able to make your business a little bit safer, to increase interior and exterior lighting is great, you know, for improved visibility. Okay, you'd be surprised at night once the sun goes down how dark some of these businesses are that haven't like updated to LED lighting on the inside. And so even if you do have cameras, it's not picking up the best video for us to be able to, you know, be able to identify someone, right, if we needed to. So trying to increase the lighting, which hopefully is going to make it more appealing also for people to come in. Remove any blind spots by installing like the concave or convex mirrors, just depending on where you're going to place it, usually in a corner. And that can give, even if there's just one person there, it gives them that kind of like 180-degree area of being able to see more of your property. And then one of the big things, like this, the bottom left one where it's got the the TV up there, and it's actually videoing people as they're coming in the door. I mean, statistically, I don't know if you have been in QT or seen that, but they're one of the ones that have the least amount of thefts. I mean, on several levels. They have more than one employee in there. They're physically like greeting the people as they're coming in, and maybe even like, oh, hey, I like that red shirt. If people know that they can be identified, it might make them think twice before they're gonna be shoplifting. And if they see themselves up on the TV, they're kind of more inclined to not do that, okay? So obviously, if you have that opportunity and can afford that in your budget, the cameras are really great. And we also recommend them on the exterior as well, because that, if people are driving up and committing the crimes, then it can give us the make, model, and potentially like a license plate of whoever these criminals are. Okay. Or I mean, even in the case that someone left behind a purse that had $5,000 in it, hopefully, somebody would reach out to the police department. We could identify someone through that as well. It's not always just a bad thing. Okay, and then just here kind of a few other suggestions. This is one of our businesses here in Fiesta. It always kind of scares me. We always suggest trying to remove that window clutter. We understand that, a lot of times the businesses get paid by these businesses to hang their signage up, but in the meantime, it also doesn't give regular citizens or our officers a chance to be able to visually see in there and say like that 4 to 8 foot window, so that if somebody's at a light or they're driving by to potentially see something criminal happening inside. So if at all possible, trying to remove some of that window clutter. Also to keep the cash registers near the front, better chance of somebody else being at, especially if there's windows, potentially being able to see it. It's always kind of scary when businesses have it way in the back, and the chance of somebody coming back, and especially if they're in there working by themselves, the potential is greater for them to be robbed. And then trying to implore your employees to be like, hey, greet the customers when they come in the door, right? It's like people walking on a sidewalk and they're just looking down. I mean, they have more of a chance of having something happen to them than somebody looking them eye to eye and, you know, being able to identify them, right? So that's something that we definitely suggest, greeting people who are coming in, and just that active customer service. We try to do what we can to help out in different shoplift situations, but ultimately it comes down to the individual businesses, right? To be able to watch what's happening in their own stores, maybe strategic placement of items. So this is a broad suggestions, but hopefully maybe it's something that might be able to help you in the future at your business. And this kind of goes back to even to the indoor lighting, the exterior lighting. Actually, that's really like for residential burglaries, and it can sometimes be for commercial, but number one deterrent, okay, is the exterior lighting. So if, you know, when they've interviewed some of these suspects and they're like, why did you pick this place to go to? A lot of times it's dark, there's not a lot of people around, they know that they can probably break in and get away with it. So that chance of being able to, if you do have the ability to change or upgrade any of the lighting, okay, exterior lighting should be placed high and point downward, which that's pretty common sense, but just keeping that in mind, because sometimes you see lighting that isn't always best focused on like the entrances and walkways, so you can keep your customers safe. And then the exterior lighting is great for the cameras as well, okay? Make sure that if you can illuminate your address number on the building, just in case there is an emergency and we need to come out to there, that's a great one as well. And then one of our new things is, if you haven't heard already, Mesa has one of the finest real-time crime centers. It's almost straight out of like CIS and some of those other shows that you see on TV. And it's been super valuable to us as far as being able to solve crimes easier. It's kind of hard. I'm gonna have Leo kind of explain a little bit more, because he's probably more up on it. But the big thing is that we're trying to give businesses and residences to sign up for this Community Connect registry program. And all we want to know is if you have any exterior lighting, say, you know, it's like I think 5 questions. So your name, an email, or a phone number, and then if you have exterior lighting, and say like I have a exterior light that faces south, or I have one that faces east, or, you know, whatever your locations of them are. And then what happens is, if there's an incident that happens in your area, we would send out an email and say, hey, could you review your video between 2 and 4 in the morning, because we had an incident that happened. So you can imagine how critical that is for the investigative team. Because years ago, literally we were going door to door, and we had to wait till a lot of the businesses opened, or they're not open on Mondays from, you know, 9 to noon. And so this is a great way. We're not looking at the inside of anything, not like some people are like, oh, Big Brother watching. No, you're just signing up to say that you have cameras and where the location is. And then I'm gonna kind of hand it over to Leo, and he can tell you more the dynamics of our real-time crime center, but that is definite way that you could help us help you.
I'll tell you something, this system, this center that we have now has been like, I mean, it's been one of the greatest things that's been invented so far in law enforcement, only because it's allowing us the opportunity to really find the individuals that are causing the problems in our community. Like, I'll give you an example. Let's say one of your businesses is burglarized at night, and you did have a camera system that was able to recover a vehicle in the area, and we say, okay, we believe this is the vehicle. We can actually go through our camera systems that exist, like say in the intersections already for traffic control purposes, and we can review those cameras utilizing some AI systems that already exist within it, some artificial intelligence, and they'll be able to dissect if that vehicle, almost like a fingerprint, if that vehicle that's viewed in your camera system at your surveillance that you have at your business, and then kind of pretty much match it, not 100%, but give us something to say, there's a dent on, let's say, the right fender well that matches the vehicle that you provided from this one over here, and then we can say, okay, well, based on that, this traffic camera is providing us a license plate, and we can then work it backwards. So we can start kind of working our system like that way in our investigative style, and then say, yes, we believe this vehicle is tied to this case, and we can start kind of going with that. Obviously, we need a lot more evidence to kind of prove that the individual did it, but it's something better than nothing. Because typically, traditionally, we've always gotten to the point where like a location, whether a home or a commercial area gets burglarized, and we have nothing. You know, we typically have to go more traditional, utilizing like human sources, or maybe some kind of witness that just didn't come forward at that time because we're doing door-to-door knocks. And then they say, you know what, I did see a vehicle that matched, that's around that time that, you know, possibly could have been yours. And then we work it backwards. But this current system now, we're linked to all of our cameras that exist right now in the city through the intersections. That kind of helps us out with that. There are some other areas where we're able to put some mobile cameras, and I'm sure some of you have seen those. They're kind of like a large generator that's attached to a longer pole with cameras on it. You'll see some like kind of red and blue lights on it. Those are other ones that we kind of deploy around the city, depending on the crime trends that are happening. But those are more in public areas. Like you'll see them more likely than not, like in a park. You might see them in a parking lot of a business that's kind of in our program that would like to have it there, and we usually ask for permission because it is a private lot, and we have to ask to make sure that it's allowed to be there. But these camera systems catch, gosh darn, almost anything in a public area that allows us to then further our investigation. So it's a great tool. It's obviously growing. It's getting a lot better. But this registry system does definitely help us out, because one of the concepts of, let's say, Karen, I hope I'm saying your name correct, but for your business, like if you had cameras in your home and you registered for this, and let's say your neighbor's home was burglarized who doesn't have cameras, we can then research to say, is there any cameras on your block? And if all of a sudden we pop up and say, you know, Peppy Paws actually has cameras at their location, and it's just right next door, we can actually contact you and say, can you do us a favor and check your cameras to see if you caught anything from your neighbors? Because we obviously can't see them, but you can. But we at least know that it's a lot better for us to kind of research that way, instead of having to knock every single house, hoping that people are home so that we can do that. So this program has been very phenomenal for us on the investigative front, and we're looking forward to the growth of it as it kind of keeps going. But it's been pretty good.
So here's the map of Mesa, kind of divided. So if you're not sure which district you belong to, that's kind of how it's divided out right now. We are going to be opening a fifth station out in the east, like Power and Brown area. So this will be changing next year once that opens in June or July. And then this here just kind of lists the different names. So if you ever needed help with something, I mean, feel free to always reach out to me, but that's kind of how it's divided depending on which district you're in. All right.
You guys have any questions for Amy? So the next topic about this one, I wanted to touch on a little bit on the investigations as it pertains to the sworn side. Like if you happen to become a victim of any of these incidents, I hope you never do, but if you do, like this is some of the things that we look for as investigators. Typically, traditionally, the patrol officer will try to obtain a lot of this information from you, but if they don't, then one of the detectives will call you or obviously show up to your location and get as much as they can. And one of the things they try their best to do is like I said, it's like say on a burglary situation, obviously after hours for the most part, some are during hours, and I'll kind of explain that a little bit. We'll typically ask you questions like, who actually closed your location? Is this the typical person that always closes it? Is it one of the other employees that was just selected that night? What procedures do they go through? Do they lock the back doors? How do they lock it? Do they lock the front? Do they turn off lights? Do they turn on the cameras from our motion sensors? We ask a lot of typical questions like that, and then we also ask who opened and at what time. Is it the same person? Is it a different person? And that's usually in order to be able to talk to those individuals to see if they observed anything prior to them leaving or prior to them arriving back to the office. So we kind of ask those very simplistic questions, but they are pretty critical to us because we are asked those questions when we go to trial by a lot of the very inquisitive jurors. And it's actually kind of funny a lot of times, to be honest with you. It gets entertaining when you kind of go and you're sitting listening to the jury sometimes, like kind of how curious they are about certain situations. And then here's the one part, like a little caveat for some of you that have like a business, an actual location, it's not as a resident. Sometimes a burglary can consist of an area that's restricted to a customer. So if it's only an employee area, like let's say for instance, it's like a Circle K and it's behind a counter. If you have it appropriately listed, or at least kind of with some kind of signage, a lot of times if an individual goes back there to say, they steal some lottery tickets or maybe some packs of cigarettes or things of that nature, and they enter an area, that will turn it from a shoplift or a theft to a burglary. So that's like some questions we might ask you as well. And then obviously the catch-all would be the surveillance footage. Do you have any surveillance footage? How do you have it? How can we obtain it? We do have a system now that we typically send to a lot of our victims. It's a link, it's called our Axon Capture or evidence.com. What allows you to do it, it allows you to download your video footage onto whatever platform you choose, and we send you an email with a link, or we send it via your phone, like a text message, and it allows you to upload those videos or any documents that you might have that we requested in a more digital format. So we're getting a lot more into the 21st century now, thank goodness. Like I said, I've almost been here 20 years, and this is the last couple of years have been pretty exciting for us. And we're starting to see a lot more streamlined type of stuff. So these are some of the things we're kind of asking for you on burglaries. On shoplifts, we're still pretty similar. We're still obviously asking for video. Any of your witnesses, like your employees, what did they see? How did they see it? Because sometimes some of the businesses, when it comes to like shoplifts or thefts, they go off what they believe they were victimized only because of the shrinkage of the items. Like, let's say they did inventory later that night and they realized they're missing a certain amount of items costing a certain amount of value, and they believe that it was the individual that was there previously that did that. But in the video evidence or lack thereof, there's no clear witness to that. They're mainly going off of shrinkage, and I'll be honest with you, a lot of times that really doesn't fly too well in the court system, because we need an actual person to see the individual, like hide the item on their person, or just walk out with it in general, and that really does help us out on that aspect if you have like the witness or the video surveillance to show that incident. We will ask you for like an itemized receipt showing each individual item that was taken to include the total of loss that you had. And if you happen to have like a loss prevention officer in your location, most small businesses don't, but if you do, we know they do their own internal report for themselves, and that's something that we would love to have as well. It does help us in court, specifically because most of the thefts and shoplifts are considered misdemeanor crimes and they go to our city court, they don't go to the county or state courts, and it does help us out in proving that the individual that we've now either arrested or submitted charges for, to kind of show that the crime did occur, and then who we have that can prove that or help us with the incident. So those are the two, like, obviously non-violent situations that can occur in a business for the most part, outside of like, you know, the other nuances like criminal damage and maybe some other things that Amy already talked about with the homeless population. One of the more other ones that can happen, it does happen quite frequently for us, unfortunately, are robberies. There are robberies where it's like a physical in nature, where they just kind of utilize their own hands to take it from you. But then there's the more extreme one where they use some kind of weapon, whether it's a firearm or some kind of edged weapon, things of that nature. So one of the things we ask you is like, has this been somebody that's been frequenting your business in the past? If it's something like that, we typically, we say, okay, there was some kind of issue in the past that maybe upset this customer, or is this just something new that maybe a target of opportunity because they observed that maybe there was only one employee left and it's almost closing hours. So we kind of ask you, do you know this person? Have you ever seen this person in the past? Obviously the video surveillance comes in key. And then, I try to ask my best for this, because we don't want you to put your safety at risk. You have to decide on your own protocol as it decides to what you want yourself or your employees to do at your business. We don't want you to have to go out there and do this yourself. So please keep that in mind, keep your own safety plan in place as best as possible. All we ask is that you try to be as inquisitive as possible and observe as much as you can. What clothing that they have on, height and weight, tattoos, scars, things of that nature will help us out tremendously. As I mentioned earlier with Amy, we were talking about our real-time crime center, is if you or your employees actually happen to observe all that detail of the individual that caused any of these issues, and then you happen to look out the glass windows of your business, if you don't have any of those covers on it, you can see the vehicle, and you can even if you just said, you know, it was a dark colored Honda Civic 4-door, and I observed a sticker in the back window. It was circular in nature, and it had like a white background with like black, and we'll be like, oh my gosh, that's fantastic detail. I'm a little exaggerated on it, obviously, but like that detail alone, I would like to say that we would have a larger percentage of finding that vehicle and then obviously tying them to the individual, because then what we would do is we would come back to you if we were able to find somebody that matched the description that you provided to us, and then show that witness or your employee or yourself a photo lineup, and hope in an effort to hopefully you would be able to identify the person that did it. And all these things obviously tie to the fact that there would be a chance that you might have to present yourself in court as at a minimum as the representative of the business, showing that you do want to prosecute and you want some kind of justice for what has happened to you or your employees. But just that alone, I mean, that would be very tremendous for us as it pertains to the investigative side. There's a lot more details, obviously, but this was just some of the smaller things that we would kind of be looking for. One of the things I was talking about with Trish about was just the incorporated versus the unincorporated areas as it pertains to the city. And I'll go back to the map to show you which areas we have that are unincorporated so far within the city of Mesa. But in a nutshell, it just pretty much means that, you know, the city is now responsible for an area that we've taken from the county or the state. The unincorporated area just means that the county board of supervisors of the state are still in control of it. And all that means for you is that which agency of you know, which law enforcement is going to kind of handle your investigation if something happened. It either going to be ourselves here, like the city of Mesa, the local law enforcement, or it might be the sheriff's department, and in a lesser extent, it could be the Department of Public Safety, which are the highway patrolmen. That's a lesser extent with them, but it still can happen. And just to kind of go back a little bit, and I'll show you what I mean. If you notice on the map here, you can see that most on the west side is all incorporated. You see Central like in the kind of, I guess, I don't know, what is that, purplish kind of color, and then you see Fiesta in the greenish. If you start to notice in the Red Mountain area, you see the area that's gray with like, you know, kind of diagonal lines. That means an unincorporated area of the city, which means it's still investigated in law enforcement sense. It's still handled by the sheriff's department. It wouldn't be handled by the city of Mesa. Does not mean you wouldn't see city of Mesa police officers roaming through that area to do high enforcement patrolling, but we just wouldn't handle any calls for service or any investigations in those areas. Same thing as you can see in the Superstition District, there's a larger section of unincorporated areas, mainly up in the northeast corner there. I think some of those areas are a little bit of kind of like Lucindas and stuff like that up in those areas, but you kind of see that we have some of these areas that still exist within the city. What those reasons are, I wouldn't be able to answer them for you, but that's just to kind of help you out. If your business or any business that you know of are on these areas, it wouldn't be Mesa police officers or Mesa detectives that would be handling those. It'd just be the other ones that we have. And then the last thing I kind of wanted to touch on is our off-duty services. If you happen to have like an event, or you just have a business where you have a lot of issues that you would like to maybe have more of a law enforcement presence, we do have off-duty services. All that means is an officer on his days off has signed himself up for the opportunity to work an extra shift, but not on his regular duties. So you can actually coordinate this as a business owner and contact any one of these numbers and contact our off-duty management. And what they'll do is they'll kind of walk you through the process of what an officer, the hourly rate might be within the city to get an officer to work at your location. And what they do is they show up in uniform, they show up armed, but if you need them at a different aspect, you can request it. It doesn't happen very much, to be honest, but we do try our best to kind of accommodate the business need. But with that aspect, I don't remember the exact prices. I know they're kind of up there, but I'll let the kind of the management company or the coordinator within our department kind of help you out with that. But it does exist. I've seen more events kind of use them. Like we do have like the big box locations like Walmart and Target, things of that nature that do use our off-duty services quite a bit. Obviously, they're a lot bigger of a business. And what it happens is that you have that deterrence of an individual wanting to commit a crime because he sees that police officer out there already kind of walking around the business. But at the same time, if something does occur, whether violent or non-violent, that officer has access to resources a lot faster than you do by calling 911. he already has he or she has his radio on them, they immediately can call for resources and they get them there a lot quicker than you can by dialing any one of our phone numbers. So it is a service I wanted to kind of throw out there for you guys to, if you wanted to notice, kind of be inquisitive about it. It is on the City of Mesa website. You can find it under off-duty services for law enforcement, and you can get a little bit more detail, but for the most part, just calling those numbers will probably get you anything you might need as a resource to kind of help you out if you ever want to consider that. Outside of that, to be honest with you, that's kind of like in a nutshell what we have. I'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions. Amy's still here, and then both Sergeant Flore and Sergeant Goodrich are here as well.